Welcome to your Motherhood Matters, where we invite you to join the momversation and go beneath the surface.
Each week, we dive in as we have real and personal talks about what matters to your motherhood. Hi, everyone. Welcome to your Motherhood Matters. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Jen.
And today we are talking about working moms, which is a complete kind of, is it an oxymoron? Every mom works. Like, really? Do we need to even put working before moms? But Jen and I have had very different journeys in our working lives. So I thought that it would be a good one to discuss. So for me, I was working full-time before I had my first daughter, and then I only went to work in between my children for the absolute minimum that you have to go back in order to get your mat leave again. And I had my 3 kids very close together. In fact, my husband took paternity leave for my 2 younger children so that I could go back in time and get enough hours. And then once I had my 3rd child, I tried to go back part-time and it wasn't going to be possible. So I stayed home full-time. And Jen, you were working full-time almost the whole time until you started your own business, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was working. So I got my teaching degree and started working as a teacher in 2006, the September of that school year. And the job market at the time, like it is now, was very tough to get a full-time teaching job. So before I had my daughter, I was teaching part-time, and it only wasn't until I didn't get full-time permanent. I was only part-time permanent until my daughter turned 1 and I went back to work. So I went back to work for the first time ever, full-time, as like a new mom, basically with a 1-year-old. So I had, the struggles of going to the home daycare, knowing that the earliest I could drop her off was 7:30, the latest pickup was 5:30, and I was balancing a grade that I had never taught with half of the class identified. And there was a lot of tears. So I worked full-time as a teacher from 2011 until 2015. And I had my son in 2013 and my daughter was 2010. And after 2015, then I decided to start my own business, which also had its own challenges with parenting.
So did you ever, I remember this, and it only happened maybe once. I was driving my daughter to a daycare and I was paying like a premium for this daycare. It was like my girlfriend, she'd known my daughter her whole life. She only had her son there. It was very expensive, but it was really good. And she just was like, don't leave me here. She was 1, but it was literally like, because I was pregnant, I was trying to get my mat leave in, I could not stay home and I had to walk away. Like, did you ever have those kind of like heartbreaking moments?
With my daughter, I didn't. She loved it so much because my daughter and son had different daycare experiences. So my daughter was at a home daycare and it was a fantastic home daycare. It's like if Mary Poppins had her own home daycare, like the woman was fantastic. And so she was retiring from having a home daycare when my son was scheduled to go. So we ended up having another home daycare placement somewhere else fall through. So I had to get him into a daycare center. And that drop off for him was horrendous. Like every time he would cry and cry, and he would settle, but then whenever he would change rooms, because when you move from infant to toddler to preschool, it would be like hitting the reset button and starting all over. But I remember with Jillian, I had the experience of picking her up sometimes and her not wanting to leave and like fighting to get in the car because she wanted to stay. And I felt like that was heartbreaking because, when at the end of the day, you just want to spend time with your child, go home, make dinner, and then you're dealing with this after dealing with all of the craziness of the workday. So yeah, I got it, I guess, on both ends, in the morning and at night, different kids.
See, I had it actually, Abby took her first steps with the daycare worker.
Oh,
She
no.
was a late walker. And I was just like, what am I doing? Why am I here right now? I never wanted to really be at work when my kids were little. I was not invested. I wasn't building in a career. I was simply working to get that mat leave. And then as soon as those were done, um, my husband and I kind of realized, it doesn't really make financial sense. And also, going forward, what is going to make sense for our family? So we had to make the kind of tough financial choice for me to stay home, and I had to basically remake our finances to make it work, because it is not easy to survive on one income.
Mhm.
But for us, I felt like the sacrifices were worth it, because I mean, for me, I was working shift work. So it was not, you could not have normal family time. We were not home together. And I know that you were often on your own as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I would literally be with the kids until like 11 a.m. I would drop Abby off when it was just Abby around noon, and I would be home around 10. So it was like from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to bed, I was working. I was either taking care of like a toddler, or I was actually at work for 8 hours a day. It was exhausting. And I had, no time for my husband. I was exhausted and pregnant. It didn't work. And I feel like I see so many moms in the moms group who will describe to me their day, and I'm just like, that's not working. Something's
Mhm.
not right, and I don't really know what we can do to bring it back.
Mhm. Yeah, I felt totally overwhelmed too when I was working full time. I felt overwhelmed because I was giving so much of my energy to my job, to the students in my classroom, so that I really felt like when I came home, I had nothing left. And because I guess I was only used to teaching part time, I didn't really know what it was like to teach full time, because although I had, had the experience of supply teaching, that's a lot different, right? So if like I balanced my income to make up the difference of the part-time teaching for 5 years, I would supply teach some mornings, and I would have like a tutoring. I did private tutoring at the time. So I would go to kids' houses and tutor. But like that's not the same as being fully responsible for everything in the classroom, and teaching grades 7 and 8. So you've got all like the emotional turmoil, and a lot of the parents were asking me for like parenting advice because it was an area of like where people were struggling. And I'm just thinking, I'm 31 and I have a 1 year old, and I have no idea how to help you parent your 13-year-old, right, outside of the structure and routines of a classroom. So it was just crazy. But then on the flip side, when I left teaching and then I pursued content marketing, that was also a huge shock, because all of a sudden now I had to figure out how to, first of all, set up a business, how to run a business. And at that point, I wasn't doing strategy work, I was doing writing. So, how do I write all of the pieces? And my son was, had just turned 2 a couple months ago. So then I was tasked with having to hire daycare for him, and then balancing how do I make enough money to do that. So yeah, it was just a lot. And that's a lot of things that parents, working moms, struggle with, is like the balancing of the daycare costs with your wage that you're bringing home. Because when I was bringing home, like even as a teacher, a large part of my salary was the daycare,
Yeah.
because we had the 2 kids. So yeah, for a lot of people, like you said, the working mom, it doesn't it doesn't always make financial sense unless you have, like, obviously as a teacher that has like a career path. It's funny though that you mentioned that you never wanted to work when your kids were small, because I was also the opposite
Yeah.
to that, to you, because I didn't enjoy the mat leaves and being home with the babies. Like I liked my kids at the baby stage, but I felt very isolated, and I like couldn't wait in a way to go back to work and have different conversations. Like I missed having that. And even when I was home, when I left teaching, I thought, oh, I'll just be home with my son and that we did that for maybe 4 months. Then my ex-husband's like, you need to bring money in. This is, you got to figure this out. And also I wasn't happy just doing that. Like, I don't enjoy them. I never enjoyed the mommy groups with the babies. I didn't like just talking about the kids. Like, I want more. And so I felt unfulfilled staying at home, but I felt really conflicted too. Like, so I had I want to be like a professional woman, but I also want to be a good mom. So I kind of had that internal struggle going on. And then when I tried to just be like one or the other, it didn't work. And then you also have to realize, like, you can be both. You don't have to pick. But you have to, when you choose that you're going to do both, you just have to give yourself grace and compassion that not everything is going to be perfect. And like, let it flow your day.
Yeah, I didn't think I would like mat leave. And with my first daughter, I was so worried about it that I just I made a bunch of friends in Lamaze, and then I really just structured and planned my days. We did a lot of I was doing a lot of exercise and a lot of outdoors time and everything, because I was so worried I'd feel shut in, that by the time my second and third daughter came around, I knew like every single baby story time at the library. I knew every walking group, every play group, every park. I had lots of friends. I had a network. And part of the reason that I had all that was because I was on such a strict budget that I knew all the free resources I was very well familiar with. And then we would also do things that we could do for low cost at home. We would do crafts. We would spend time with friends in the backyard. I had a lot of outdoor equipment that I got off different buy and sell sites or garage sales. So we had lots of resources so that we could, stay busy, stay active, socialize. But then also we were on such a strict budget because my husband at the time was working way through his career. So he wasn't making the kind of income he's making now, like while the kids are now 10 years in. So we had to be very, very careful with our money. So even balancing the budget was a big part of what I was doing. Things like shopping, buy and sell sites for their clothes, making food from scratch, making crafts from scratch. I made laundry detergent. I made our home cleaners. I made their babies like skincare supplies. I made almost everything that I could. So that was also a big part of my day. Taking care of the kids, but then also, planning the meals, planning the budget, saving money everywhere I can. Fast forward a few years, then I did start slowly going back to work. And I found positions where I could work remotely part-time. Well, that position turned into a full-time position downtown. And that was a career track. So I shifted into working full-time. And it was a balance between working in office and at home. But because my middle daughter has autism, I found after working one summer, full-time downtown with a commute that was like an hour and a half each way, that it was like, you know what, even though there is a career track here and the possibility, it's not the right fit for my family and for my situation. And I actually did the same, started my own business, doing freelance writing. And I found that I was actually taking home more, working way less hours because of the cost of commuting, because of the cost of daycare, because of just the cost of, running out the door and, what, I didn't make my lunch, I have to buy it downtown, or, all of it adds up, along with the emotional wear and tear. Again, I was dropping kids off every day, kids that were used to being with me all the time. And it just, the cost was too much, both financially and emotionally. And I had to step back.
It's good though that you did that and that you made the decision that was right.
Yeah,
I remember, well, when we first met, I remember being so impressed with you. I don't think I told you this, because you made the stay-at-home mom thing look easy and fun. And I remember thinking, I'd be at your house, I'd be thinking, how come I can't enjoy this as much as Melissa seems to enjoy it? That was the first time remember the first time you invited me over, and then it's like paint everywhere and we're like, oh boy. And you just like take it all in stride. And yeah, I just remember being so impressed, like, wow, she really has all this figured out, you know,
Yeah.
and and like you said, you had been so structured in, budgeting and making things and cutting costs. And that was definitely something that I struggled with when I left teaching, because that income that I was used to like went with it, right?
Yeah.
So then it was a matter of like learning a new skill set, and then working my way up to higher paying positions, and that takes time too. So that was like a real shock to the system, that you're not necessarily, like, I didn't walk out of one career and it took like probably 4 years to build up to be at where now I have the earning capacity that I would have as a teacher. And actually, I guess now, because I'm developing my own programs, the earning capacity can surpass that. But like at the time, Melissa, 4 years ago, I didn't see that. Like, I held the belief that I can make this happen, and I was really focused and determined to work my way up and learn everything I could. But yeah, it was scary to make that leap, but I really came to the point as the working full-time mom in the environment that I was in the schools, with the violence and all of that going on, my well-being was just so low that I could not stay any longer. Like, I had to make the choice. So I made it for my well-being, but I also made it, I think, because I did want to be home. I wanted to be more available to the kids, and I wanted to not miss out on important things. Like, I didn't want to give all my energy to a job that was just going to eat me up and spit me out, because like I left and had, pretty much very low well-being, had to work on that. And they just, create a new job opening. Here, we're
Oh
hiring
yeah.
this teacher. And it's like that, you're replaceable. So that's one thing that, I'm glad that I had that experience to realize, like, the job and the income and the work is replaceable, but your health and well-being isn't. And yeah, it was definitely impacting, I think, my ability to, be fully present for my kids, because I was just not not doing well at that point, and but it was hard too. Like, I also had the internal struggle when I left, because I looked at it like, oh my gosh, like, I've put almost 10 years of my life into this, because I started teachers college in 2005. So I had spent 10 years building, right? And I mean, the teaching, it's a professional career. It was a job that I wanted to do since I was a kid. So to let all that go, and to tell people, that was the other thing, to tell people that I was, quitting teaching, quitting a full-time teaching job that had a pension and a track to making, almost six figures. A lot of people thought I was crazy. And
Yeah.
also, when I left, a lot of friendships kind of broke up too, because like teacher friendships, because, well, you're leaving, so you're not one of us anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have that common bond, I guess, that we did. So yeah, there was a lot of like emotional turmoil that went with that, because I wasn't really, I guess, I didn't know what to expect. So I really leapt into the unknown, and I met you probably about 4 months after. That's when we met, and then I had
Yeah.
started the writing. But yeah, it's such a struggle for the working mom, and I don't know really what the solution is for it.
I
I think,
I think you need to consider, like, when I left my full-time position, I tried to negotiate more time at home, more flexibility for parents, because I would be at work and I would get calls because my daughter had autism and she has higher needs. And for me to be so far away from her, that's difficult. But the other part of it was they would call me. My husband was at work. They would call mom. And I was expected to go, and I would be like, I will see you in 90 minutes. You still want me to come? Yes. But when I told my work that I needed more flexibility, there was no loyalty. They were like, and I had worked for them for like 3 years, and they were like, no, you know what? It was just another job to fill. So you got to think, like, you know, are you putting your time and effort and talent into the right place? Because I ended up leaving that job, working for myself, and then I got a new client. And when I talked to this new client, which is my main client now, anytime that I need to change my hours or change my availability, they have that loyalty and they treat me so well. Is everything okay? What can we do? Let's work together. And you can tell that I'm valued there. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I should be putting my time and effort. And I also can work 100% from home. That's where I should put my time and effort. But a lot of, I think moms need to evaluate whether it is where you should be putting your time and effort, if they have the same loyalty for you as you have for them, or are you a number? And if you are, is there another possibility for you? Making that leap is so scary, and not everyone is made to be an entrepreneur.
No,
But
definitely not.
is there a possibility for a more flexible work schedule? Is there a possibility for a remote position? Is there a possibility where you can make cuts to your budget and allow for more family time? There are a lot of creative solutions if you have the ability to look for them, and kind of if you're brave enough to take that leap. It's not always easy because it's your security and it's your finances, but what's more important, because it's your kids and your family.
Hmm. And that's it too, because the entrepreneur, it really is a very specific personality type. So I think, as you mentioned, the remote positions, like I think maybe one of the ways to a possible solution is, when you're exploring going back to the workplace, because many moms do make a transition after going back to work. You might look for a different position after a mat leave because maybe the one that you left isn't really working now that you have kids. But I think, when you're evaluating different jobs to apply to, looking at, what are there, like, is the remote position possibility? And because more and more companies are really going to work from home solutions, because it saves the company thousands of dollars, to have people have the capacity to work from home. And in many cases, people can be more productive than, like, I know recently, like, I had to go and see a client and we did a 4-hour brainstorm session and meeting and stuff. But like, when I really sit back and look at it, I'm thinking, would we have accomplished more if we had done it as a Zoom video? Right? It probably, right? Because I feel like sometimes the in-person meetings can just, it goes down a rabbit hole, it's less focused, whereas like there's so many technological solutions now, like, there really is that ability to have that connection to the team and to be focused more on the productivity. So I think employers are really starting to realize that that's something that they need to do, and also that, it lets them attract top talent who needs the flexibility, right? Because like, when you left, you had been with them for 3 years, so you knew their brand inside and out, especially as a writer. And to get a writer that can write in your brand voice, very difficult. It takes time to get that level of expertise. So, by like, had they had more of a like these remote options, then they would have been able to retain the top talent and probably saved some productivity, like increase their productivity. Because there's
Yeah.
like interruptions when you're working from home, like especially like the deep work that needs to be done. Like both you and I, like, you do the writing, I sometimes do writing or strategy. Like that's deep work where you need to be focused, and you can't have somebody dropping by every 5 minutes talking to you about who knows what, so like the deep work that needs to be done, I really feel like face to face could be for meetings only,
Well,
because
for
it
sure. And not
really.
all work environments lend themselves to good deep work. Like this work environment was an open, like one of those open offices, no walls, no nothing. I was having to do interviews where like I was disturbing everyone in the office. Like, and even just like I see moms all the time post about, well, I have this offer that's, less money but less commute. I don't know if I should take it. I would say 100% take it, because the commute was what was killing me. The commute right now when I work from home is amazing. I can drop my kids off at school and I can start work before 9 a.m. with no commute.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like I would just be, and the commute really was because I was taking public transit. Like it wasn't me, sitting in traffic or driving constantly, but I was exhausted. It made no sense, but it's just I don't even know what it is, but it just took it completely out of me. And where we live, a long commute is part of your workday. So if you can even just eliminate that part of it, that could be really helpful, because there's so many moms who are getting up, leaving the house like between 6 and 7, and not getting home between 6 and 7. And as you know, like little kids go to bed by like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So the time that you get with them is just a small window, and you're also exhausted. You've been on the road for 12 hours. So that doesn't really lend itself to be the best parent that you could possibly be, because the odds are stacked against you. So if you can work to even just eliminate part of the commute, or cut down on the hours, or whatever you can do, and then look at your budget and what isn't a necessity. Could you cut, for example, your cable bill in return for working 5 less hours a week, or taking a job that's closer to home? Like what are necessities and what are luxuries? Because being able to have FaceTime, I think, is a necessity. Like when my kids were little, we never had cable. We never had luxuries. We drove like the most ugliest, rattiest van around. It was like the biggest embarrassment in the world, but it had no car payment. So it was what we were driving. I remember years ago, it's before I had kids, well before I had kids, I had a friend who had just had her first kid, and she was about to go back to work. And she was like, oh, I really don't want to go, and da da da. And she's like, after all the daycare, the difference is $400 or something, and that's my car payment. And I said, could you go down to one car? And she's like, oh, well, and I'm like, seems like not that big of a sacrifice if you would get to stay home. The difference is $400. So it's kind of like out of the box thinking. But sometimes that could be the difference between getting to make these kind of choices that are a little unorthodox and might, sacrifice your finances a little bit. But in the end, you could have a nicer time when the kids are little, or even like, if you have special needs children like I do, it doesn't end. She is in school, but she has appointments, she has meltdowns. I need to be close to her, because she does so much better when I'm near, and I can take her and be there when she needs me.
Definitely. I think these are some awesome tips that you gave everybody. And I love how you have such a much more broad experience with all of this than I do. I always feel like I learn something new. I don't learn one thing. There's like, gee, Jen, there's 10 different things that you could do. But I'd love to hear from everybody else on the Facebook page. What's your biggest struggle with being a working mom? How do you evaluate, when you're looking to make a career change? Have you implemented any of these strategies, or really what was your biggest take home from this episode?
And also, like, to know that it's okay if you don't want to be a stay-at-home mom, because it is not for everyone. And obviously there was also lots of days that it was not for me. And I do like working, and I do like the balance. But it's not even a choice of working or staying at home. It's just bringing more balance into it. And what could you do to kind of make it easier? Because working moms, which is, like we said, that's not even really a thing, but it is so difficult, and you have a lot stacked against you. So what can we do to make it easier?
Yes. Look forward to hearing what everyone has to say. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. Join the Momversation and follow us on Facebook at Your Motherhood Matters.
Help others by sharing this podcast with your social media channels, and don't forget to leave a positive review. You can hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes.